Hola Juan, buenas tardes, buenas noches para algunos.
Good morning.
Este episodio tan especial.
Welcome to this very special episode.
Antes de iniciar el día de hoy,
Before we begin today, I want to tell you that we are very much excited to get to this point. This is our episode 100.
Y ha sido un camino increíblemente emocionante
It has been a really incredible journey.
poder haber tenido la oportunidad de hablar
Being able to speak and share ideas and also learn from leaders all over the world regarding nuclear and physical security matters. We are very excited for this episode. This is a great milestone, and we hope we can continue bringing this forum to you, to bring these conversations to you, to help us learn and understand what is happening in the world. It's also nice to see what all these professionals are doing. I want to also thank somebody who has been key in this work, and that is Rosita Torres. Rosita has been my mentor in all these matters of physical and nuclear security. She's one of the people that knows the most about this, and she has also been the driving force in many of these talks. Rosita, if you could turn on your camera so that we can see you. I really want to thank you in public for all these years. And hopefully we can continue fulfilling this dream. This is a dream of both of us that we have been sharing for so long. We cannot hear you, but it is very exciting to be with you.
Juan. Sí, ha sido un recorrido grande.
Thank you, Juan. Yes, this has been a great journey. I'm very pleased to be part of this project.
Me gusta mucho el tema que tú refieres, pero también he disfrutado mucho
and I've also enjoyed giving visibility to my colleagues who work so hard, but sometimes their work is not known in their countries. So we are going for another 100 episodes. Yes, I mean, visibility has been key. And also inspiration to inspire new generations, to inspire men and women, and to show this world to others so that more people get involved. Look, I don't want to extend myself, but I want to tell you that at the age of 65,
desde muy
65
chiquita,
years in the
tengo
nuclear
la
sector,
claridad de que la única
I
manera
can
de
tell you
trascender
that the only
es
way that we
enseñando y
can
transmitiendo lo que se
transcend
sabe.
is by
Y
learning
para
and
mí, pues,
teaching
Charlas con Juan ha
what
sido
we
un
know.
vehículo para eso.
Charlas con
De nuevo,
Juan
muchas gracias por tu
has been this
confianza y muchas
vehicle.
gracias
Again, thank you
a
for
todo el
your
equipo por
trust.
su apoyo este
And
tiempo.
also, I want to thank the entire team
Y
for their support.
adiós. Y, y a lo que
And
vinimos, vamos.
bye. And
Hoy para
let's cut to the
celebrar este
chase.
episodio 100,
Well, today, to
tenemos un
celebrate this
invitado
episode 100,
increíble,
we have an
es una
incredible
persona que
guest.
ha causado profundo impacto
He has generated
en
a
este
great
mundo de
impact
seguridad
in this
nuclear,
world
en
of
el mundo
nuclear
a nivel
security
global.
globally.
Es un líder definitivamente
He is a
en
leader
este sector.
in this
Eh,
sector.
y hoy tenemos la oportunidad de charlar
And
con
so
él
today, we have the
un
opportunity
rato.
of speaking to him for a
Voy a hacer la
little
entrevista con
bit.
él en inglés. Voy a
So the
pasarles ahora la entrevista
interview
en
will
inglés.
be held
Los
in
que quieran
English.
escuchar la entrevista en español se pueden quedar en el
Those
canal de
who
español.
want to listen to the interview in Spanish, you may remain
simultánea.
in the Spanish
Entonces,
channel. We
permítame
have
un minuto.
simultaneous interpreting.
Thank you. I want to introduce today Lars van Dassen, which is the director of WINS. Lars is, as I said in Spanish, a person that has had profound impact in this sector for over 30 years. And this is an absolute privilege to have Larson here with us. Lars, thank you for taking this time and appearing in Charla so we can talk a little bit about this world that we're living in and everything that's happening. And obviously, what WINS has done and what you want to do in the future. But I would love to start by asking you a little bit about you so that the people that don't know you, that I think are just a few, get a taste of how did you start in this and how did you evolve to come to where you are right now?
Thank you so much, Juan. It's wonderful to be back on screen with you. During the pandemic, we were as well.
Yes.
And I remember that as a meeting that didn't really end because we had so many things to share.
We had a lot of things to talk about.
But we still have it that we have to meet in person. And I'm sure that that will be one way or another this year.
100%.
It is also an honor for me to be in your program number 100. It's a great occasion for us. So I hope I can meet your and everyone else's expectations.
Thank you. Absolutely.
So then, if you ask me how I came into this, then I will give you the honest story.
Yeah.
And it is that it was by a coincidence. And it was because in 1986, I traveled with, so let's say 40 years ago, I traveled with two friends. We traveled in Greece.
Yeah.
And on the train, I met there was a young girl my age at the time who was from Austria.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but falling in love with her. And
Okay.
2 years later, we met again in Salzburg.
Yeah.
And then we had a relationship and that was going well and so on. And so I was considering how can I, as part of my studies, do an internship in Austria. And then I started checking with various UN organizations and so on. And then I ended up with the IA.
Okay.
And I found out that that was incredibly interesting and really something for me and the future.
So it was a woman.
Yes, but
Yeah.
then that relationship that ended, but my love with the nuclear issues that stayed.
And you've been in this for 30 years, no? Non-proliferation.
Yeah, well, you could say, well, the first, yeah, 35 at least, yes. And then
So
through that, I came into, I did this internship in 1990, 91.
yeah.
So that's 35 years ago. And that was just during the first Gulf War. So, and this was when there was an anxiety that Iraq would have nuclear weapons and what would happen and so on. So it was a very exciting time to be at the IA. And yeah, So I've stayed since then.
And how did you come into winds?
Well, then I was for a long time I was in academia, first in Germany, then in Sweden, and then I came into the University of Uppsala, and from there I came to the Swedish regulator.
Yeah.
And with the Swedish regulator, I worked for 20 years, and I started as a project manager for projects in Russia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan. You know, this was when the Soviet Union had fallen apart. And so I was in charge of all these projects, and then I had various management positions and ended up as head of the international department. Then I was asked 5 years ago whether I would be interested in applying for this position at WINS. And I was, because I had just had a new director general, and it was a person that didn't get along with me and that I didn't get along with.
Yeah.
But there were many of us that were leaving. So, but then I thought, okay, I will try WINS, and I have had no reasons to regret that. It's an incredible organization, and it's agile, and it is moving, and yeah, as you will also know from my colleagues, you know, every day with us is an opportunity to think of something new and better. Why don't we try this? And it's one of the things that really inspires me.
What is the mission of WINS, Lars?
You know, there's
and has it evolved or not?
You know, there's one key word that we use, and I like it very much, and that is professionalization in nuclear security. And when we say nuclear security, then we mean you know, measures against terrorist attacks, antagonistic attacks and events, mafia, organized crime, etc. So our focus is completely on security, and you could say it's virtually nothing on safety, unless it's in the phase that is between the two. So professionalization of nuclear security, and the reason why this is important, that is that, you know, if you think in a nuclear facility, you have lots of people that work in safety or production or safeguards or radiation protection. So it is people who have backgrounds in physics, plasma physics, nuclear engineering. Whereas people who are in nuclear security, they don't need a degree in plasma physics. So their background is often much more mundane. It can be from the police, the military, and so on. But still, they also need to have a core mission. They need to be a cadre. They need to have a camaraderie, you could say. And with that comes also a common professionalization, that you can recognize yourself in colleagues that you meet from elsewhere and internationally, and so on. So that becomes very important. And this is where you can then say, well, I could start by saying that WINS came into being after the 9/11 attacks in 2001, when almost 3,000 people were killed in the United States in a response to as a result of a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
And then it took a couple of years, but there was a realization that, okay, the IAEA is doing a lot in nuclear security, but there's not really an organization that is addressing the nuclear industry. And when we say nuclear industry, then we mean all the organizations that are doing practical work, in contrast to regulators that are controlling bodies.
Okay.
So when we say industry, we also include, like, you know, cancer therapy in a hospital, even if it's in the public sector, and it can be research reactors that are also in the public sector. It's still industry for us, just like nuclear power plants are.
But there was education material in the agency. There was education. There was material towards the industry that was, I guess, guided towards the industry, right? But there was no focus on the gap was that there was no focus on the professionalization of that industry, or what was the gap that you saw?
You could say that, but you can say that there was not a specific concern for what is the nuclear industry's situation.
Okay.
And much of it has to do with the fact if you look at the IAEA, then the members of the IAEA, it's member states. And the organizations that come then to the IAEA, it's ministries or it's regulatory authorities. But it is very, very rarely that it is, representatives from nuclear enterprises and
Operators, yes.
exactly. So that was one thing where we thought that we need to change that. That has to be changed. And it's also a fact, where we've had meetings with some of the bigger nuclear facilities in the world, and they say, well, we have no relationship with the IA. Even if we, as a testing ground or for this or that, we would probably be the most interesting, but we have no relationship with them. Sometimes we can be on the delegation for a meeting with the IA, but it's nothing in itself.
At the beginning, and many people were curious about that. That's why I'm asking, did the IAEA saw this initiative as complementary or as supplementary? How was that?
It was seen as complementary. And this is something where people always think that there is a conflict, but there isn't really. Because when WINS was established in 2008, then it was with a resolution from the Board of Governors of the IAEA that said, okay, this is being done, that's good, it's a good initiative. Maybe also because the initiative was led by the United States and Canada and the UK and Netherlands, so some of the bigger players in the IAEA. So it was also due to because of their support that it went through so well. But if I say then more concrete what it is that we then do with this professionalization, then I can say, the base of it is that our members are not member states, our members are not nuclear facilities, our members are persons.
That's fantastic.
Yes,
the people that participate in the industry.
And I think so too. It is really
the end user.
Yes.
Is the last mile.
Yes, I like that too, because then they're always, in the workplace, they're always enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Want to drive something. And then they go to the boss and say, you know what, there's an organization there that we can join. I've joined already. I signed up yesterday and I already have access to so and so. So I like that very much that it's individual members. And we just rounded 10,000. And they are in 170 countries. So that also means, when we send out a newsletter, which we do every month, if we have a special message, which we do every now and then we reach a large audience, because that is then, a couple of colleagues who then share it with other colleagues and so on.
I guess it becomes a very powerful source because you're actually talking to the people, like you say, to the people that are in the industry, which at the end of the day have this relationship with the regulators, and the regulators listen to them as well, right?
Yes.
So in a way, you're tackling the things from the down up, right? From the bottom up, no?
Yeah. And this is also where we see that, for instance, when we have online seminars, then the people, some are joining from the workplace, others, they join from home. We say, okay, I don't want this to be part of my job today. I just joined because I'm interested in the issue. So that leads me to say, so if the membership, that is the base of all, and here, then the four core areas where we're active, that the first one is called sharing operational experience. And that means that we bring people together, and that can be online, and it can be in situ in a certain country. It can be in the Philippines, it can be in Kenya, in Argentina or Colombia. We continuously have something going on, and we have between 25 and 35 per year. And then
sharing, let me interrupt you for a minute there. It's that sharing our operational experience has it truly materialized in real advances? This sharing is one of the parts that you have seen that has collaborating between and sharing the experiences. What results has that given?
I would say it this way. It maybe happens most of all when it is that people meet in person, but it also happens online. And it is one thing that we know that now there are networks, then there are people from Brazil and Argentina that say, we came across this, we need to talk more, and and what are your contacts, and can I have your email address afterwards from WINS, and these things that they really happen. But this is where then step number 2 comes into the picture, because every workshop you have leads to a report, and that report it summarizes the event, but also what the conclusions were and next steps and so on. But then often it also leads to a publication, a separate publication, and we call that publication then a best practice guide. And a best practice guide is then, we were gathered here, and we think for the issue of identifying insider threats, for instance, or strengthening supply chain security. We think that these are the 5, 6 principles that are valuable. And they have then come out of people that have really met and been able to penetrate together what an issue looks like. And with that is also one of the things that is charming with WINS. It is that it is not really a place that is assembling expertise, but it is a place that is bringing all the good people with experience together.
And packaging that knowledge to disseminate it.
Exactly. Yes. And that is something I find very valuable. And this is then when we do these publications, best practice guides, then we also use people in the field to write these publications. And we have a very thorough process for it, writing a draft, and there's a drafting committee, and there's a review committee, and so that we know when we bring something on, then it is solid. It has been tested by the best people in the area.
Okay, so one is one thing, the other one is the publications and dissemination of the information. That's the second one.
The second was the publication. The third area is something we call benchmarking and evaluation services. And that is if there is a nuclear facility that wants to have a review of its nuclear security. And so far we've mainly done that as concerns, governance issues, nuclear security culture, governance culture, and so on. And it is in cooperation with a facility that we then establish, which would be the angles that they're interested in having addressed, and how we do that. And then typically we send a team of experts, 2 from WINS and 2 international or 3 international experts. And they go to a facility and go through the questions. It's a questionnaire, and they have interviews in groups with the people. And at the end,
all of this is without payment. The facilities pay for that.
We have to have cost coverage for this. And then we send a report to the facility with our conclusions at the end. This is a measure that last year we did at Baraka nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. The year before that at the Canadian nuclear power plant. We've done earlier, before I came, at the Kuwait nuclear power plant in South Africa, and also at a medical isotope production facility in Turkey. So it has different shapes, but it's an issue where I want WINS to expand. I want us to do much more of that. And one of the issues that you and I discussed last time we met was in relation to research reactors, because that is, I think security of research reactors is an issue that needs much more attention.
100%.
Because there's so many research reactors, and there's such a big span in terms of how they're used, whether they're used at all, what kind of fuels they have, and how many people are working there, and what the security conditions are, and so on. So it's an issue. Yeah. So then the fourth issue is something we call certified training. And it's one of the interesting, one of the important things is that, and as I mentioned before, people in the nuclear field, if they have degrees in plasma physics and nuclear chemistry and all that, then that's fine. But if you come into nuclear security and you don't have demonstrable knowledge in the same extent, then it creates kind of a different situation. So we have 10 training modules that experts can join, and that is it's online. You get a textbook or you get online access to training materials, and then within 6 months you have to do an exam online, and it's a multiple choice exam. And if you pass it, then you get a certificate, and part of the certificate is also something called digital badging, so that in your email signature, it becomes demonstrable that you have this certificate, so to speak.
I
This is
I've seen it firsthand. The impact that fourth step has had has been incredible. Many people that I know firsthand in our organization have benefited from that and see these programs as incredible. They have changed. It has changed their lives. It has it's a demonstrable impact.
It's true. And this is also one thing that we see is particularly important for women in the field, because it is not so often that they have backgrounds from the police and the military. And it is often that this is, there are maybe 100 applicants and then there's one woman. But then she stands out because she has a background and a certificate that no one else has. And I can mention many examples in Nigeria, in Brazil, in Serbia, in Malaysia. I can now mention many examples of women who have then had a position. Aha, okay, you're something else and different, so we take you.
We take you seriously, and we take you seriously.
Yes, exactly. So that is important. Yeah. So those are the 4 core areas, and I can say we have 3 overarching things that goes like threads and arrows through all of it. The first one is, as I indicated, now we have a gender program. We think it's important that there is gender equality, that there's opportunity for men and women, and now these issues are maybe not so popular anymore, but so I've turned the argument around a little bit and found a way that no one can really challenge me, and that is to say, we know that organizations where there are both men and women are more happy organizations, which means that then they are also more efficient in accomplishing what it is that they have to do. So it's not at all an issue for us to argue for keeping and a focus on these issues. Secondly, young generation issues are very important. Promotion of people into this area, every aspect of it doesn't have to be only security, it can be all of it. It's very important. One of the issues that I have now actually come across, and it's one of the, I hope we'll talk about it later, is that there are many countries that have like nuclear training programs, but don't have a nuclear project. So that they train, engineers and physicists, but what happened with them afterwards? There's not a national project in their country. So then they go to another country that benefits from their capabilities. But we can return to that issue because I think it's an important one. But nevertheless, I mean, in general, you could say one of the issues in the nuclear sector is that there are many that have been around for a long time and maybe stay after retirement simply because there's no one to replace them. So it's an important issue.
Okay.
Then the third overarching issue is one that is incredibly important, and I call it "Wins tells the truth." And our truth telling here is very important because it leads to a next step that I think we'll get into talking about. But it started with when the war started with the Russian occupation of invasion of Ukraine and the occupation of first the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and then the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and the latter is still ongoing. We have edited 2 books that are collections of testimony from people who have witnessed all this, and those who have, and some of them who fled then from the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and people who have fled from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And all people that are interested can join WINS as a member and have access to these to the last of these two books. And it's the last one that is particularly on nuclear security. And it is harrowing stories that people tell about torture, different kinds of misconduct, colleagues that have been killed, been forced to do things that are gross violations of everything that is nuclear safety and nuclear security and radiation protection and so on. For instance, being forced to swim in a pool with spent nuclear fuel and things like that. So it's harrowing things, and out of this came then has come a separate publication that we call Nuclear Security 2.0. And now we are actually a little bit into the questions, number two that you raised, of where it is that nuclear security is going. Because there's been one gigantic shift internationally, and that is with the Russian, before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we used to think of threats in the nuclear field as the perpetrators would be terrorist groups, organized crimes, etc., etc. And now we suddenly see that it is a state that is the perpetrator. And then comes the question that is, okay, when will the same state do the same thing against the next nuclear power plant? Well, they already tried that in Ukraine, by the way. Or when will Russia try to do the same against another country? Or when will a third country do the same against another country?
Yeah.
And this is where there is actually a very unfortunate development happening in the world, because cyber attacks are becoming very prevalent.
Yeah.
And also threats with drones. This actually happened in Sweden on the night before the Russian occupation of Ukraine. There were suddenly drones flying over Sweden's nuclear power plants. And then they were traced where they came from. They came from the Baltic Sea and could be isolated to a couple of vessels that were involved in the Russian gas pipe projects and so on. So there's a whole new set of things that are happening and unfolding. And one thing that I've heard recently in North America or last year was that there was a gentleman who said to me, from a North American nuclear power plant. He said, we've had cybersecurity attacks on our facilities to such an extent that had it been physical attacks, then it would have been a declaration of war.
So that's precisely my point, Lars. When will a cybersecurity attack become a declaration of war?
Exactly.
Because in essence, it is.
It is.
But it's treated as if it weren't, right?
Exactly. And it's the same with drones. The distance that drones can traverse are doubling every year. And so, sometimes I used to hear, like 5 years ago, then people would say, yes, but our facility is so remote that we think that we're protected by distance. That is not the case anymore.
Not the case at all, anywhere in the world.
Exactly. So the world is becoming smaller in one way, but also more desperate and problematic. And this is where I think there's a new level of realization that we need to have. One of them is, let me put it this way, I don't say this in any way to say anything critical of the IAEA, because they have their mandate and they have to work as they must and can.
Yes.
But for them to raise the issue of state threats is virtually impossible, because states are members of the organization and they don't want the debate.
No.
And there might also be others that don't want that debate. Um, but this is where I think there is then an extra obligation for winds to talk about it. And we do that.
I think it's the only way. I agree with you 100%. It is very difficult for the agencies to raise this voice against its own members. But it's a reality.
Yes.
And someone has to talk about it, because in this future that you are, I guess in this reality and future that you're describing, the threat is completely different. It's a completely different scenario with these state actors. And you raise the point of cybersecurity, but now we have, AI, and now we're going to have quantum, right, technologies, and we're going to see that states, not necessarily the states that are the biggest ones with more armies or more people, are going to be more powerful, are the ones that have more money to be able to get more AI, more technology. So states that are smaller are going to be able to punch much harder than the weight in the future. So they're going to come into this picture, no?
Yes.
So how do you see this future developing?
I think, in one way you can be pessimistic.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that has happened to me over the past year, and the first one was that I was in Colombia, which was fantastic, and I would say it this way, it has changed my life. Then I've been in Nigeria and Ghana and Senegal. That has also changed my life. And I've just been in Kenya. That has also changed my life. Because I see, if we go on a little more with the threats, then I would like then to come to where the hope is. And the hope is in Colombia and in Kenya and these places. And this may be surprising to some people, but I will nevertheless try to make a case for it. See, there's now this falling out and falling apart of the superpowers in the world, and that is then propelling all small states in the world around, and that is a difficult situation in itself. In this, it is nevertheless the case that these big players, they happen to have nuclear weapons also, but that is both part of it and it's not part of it, but it's another story. But they are very aggressive in marketing their nuclear power plants and small modular reactors on an international market.
Yeah.
I think that is good, but there's a risk also that they underbid each other with various issues. And I was just at a conference in Malaysia, where one of these big countries was presenting its products and saying, yes, and for us, you can have floating nuclear power plants and you don't even have to have your own regulator. We come just with the whole kit and put it in a harbor somewhere, and you have electricity and so kind of diminishing the importance of things. But now I come to where I think that there is hope, and that is that nuclear technology is also an issue that is an incredible opportunities for countries in the world.
It is.
I don't see it as necessary. If we would take, let's take Côte d'Ivoire, or let's take Paraguay, or we could take any of these countries and say, if they would want nuclear power, then I think most people would think of, they have to find a suitable counterpart who can come and build it for them.
Yeah.
That is a mindset and a mind frame that we have taught ourselves now for decades, that is the way you do it. But I'm also thinking that maybe that's not necessarily the only response. If I think of, the Swedish nuclear sector developed in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Sweden has had in total 12 reactors in operation and still has 6 in operation. Out of these 12, I think it's 7 or 8 that were designed by Swedish experts.
Yeah.
It was and it's now resurfacing as an interesting issue. It was a design bureau of 5 or 6 people.
Okay.
who designed the nuclear power plants that are still in use, partially in use in Sweden. So if those things were possible for Sweden in the 1960s, don't we think it could be possible also for other countries today to at least consider how much of all these areas of expertise they could do themselves?
Especially with all the technology of internet and everything, and the knowledge that has been
exactly. And then if they come to a complicated issue, let's say water chemistry, say, okay, we've not really have an experience here. Okay, let's find an international partner for that issue. Then comes the next issue. Let's find another international partner, so that you stay in control of your own project and don't just turn it over to be a turnkey project delivered by someone else. This is an issue that I have brought up now in West Africa, in Ghana, and Nigeria and Senegal, and spoken with their regional organization about ECOWAS. And there's massive support for it. And as late as yesterday, I spoke with various authorities in East Africa. East Africa, there's also an organization about whether something similar would be relevant for them. And immediately they just reacted, said, this cannot be done quickly enough. This has to be something we work on.
Are you seeing then that countries are starting to see the possibility of doing
Yes. It's a big step for them.
Yeah, of course.
But I've had 2 meetings with decision makers, at level of party leaders and so. And then they start by saying, but in our country, people are afraid of nuclear issues and so on. And then I've asked one question. I said, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid of a release of radioactivity, or are they afraid of the foreign dominance? And then they look at each other and then say, well, we are afraid of the foreign dominance. And what is the cure and way out of that? That is to try to turn something into a national project. And to the extent that you can do that, then you also increase the things that we talk about when we talk about nuclear security culture, namely that you're proud of where it is that you work and what you do. I mean, how much pride would you have of having a turnkey delivery of a nuclear facility, and it's maybe even nationals from that other country that are working at the facility? How much is that? I heard this in Africa, that there's one saying, but Lars, you have to understand that in Africa, there's really a race to be the first country that has nuclear power. I said, but that race is already lost because South Africa has nuclear power for 40 years. So, I mean,
that's already.
So I think there's a whole mindset that we have to think about here. See, 2 weeks ago I was in Malaysia. I spoke with a wonderful man who was retiring from their technical university, and he and I, we had a little bit of the same discussion. And so I said to him, your students, do they ever, as part of their curriculum, do they have to make a design of a reactor? And said, yes, they have to do that. And then he said immediately, and you know what? They design stuff that is much better than the existing reactors, because all new reactors that are built now are, with the exception of the technology around it, the controlling technologies, it's basically the same reactors that have been built for the past 50 years.
But what you're saying, Lars, that is wonderful, that I think is that you are planting a seed, and you're seeing that these governments are, before the thought is we grew up and it was not a possibility, right? Others had to do that. We don't do that. We can't do that. It's impossible, right? But when people start understanding that, the first part is to understand, listen, maybe it's not impossible, right? Maybe let's consider this, because maybe we have the capabilities to do it. And that is really the first step. I think that after that starts, there comes a tipping point. People start to realize that
Yeah.
the first one does it, the second one does it, the third one doesn't. Oh, we can, right?
Yes.
Believing
Yes.
that can is 80% of the way.
It is, and just imagine a Latin American country that would do this on its own. And you'll have foreign powers that come and say, "Oh, we can deliver an SMR in 2 years." Okay, if there is in a Latin American country that says, "We'll build it ourselves, it takes probably 6 years." Well, what do you get on top of it? You get the entire technology development. You
100%.
make use of all the hundreds of physicists and you develop new training disciplines and new kinds of physical studies in physics and engineering and so on.
No, and the current manufacturers are going to tell these countries that no, this is going to be faster. You can't do that. We are the only ones. They're going to continue doing that. They're interested in selling. But I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's worth the extra years 100 times.
It is. It is. And this is where, and here comes also a narrative that is one that, what? Two examples, and it's been very prevalent for me in Nigeria and Ghana and Kenya and Senegal. Then people say this, yes, but there's also these issues with the CO2 emissions and all. That's why nuclear is important. And then I tell them one thing, say, okay, maybe it's important, but I don't think it's your task to solve problems that others have created. You have to think, how can you have reliable, cheap energy that makes you competitive in the world market for all? So if it is that you have to use gas to produce electricity, then go down that road. Yeah. Because you cannot, just because you have to contribute to others' problem solving, you cannot ditch your own opportunities. That's one of them. And then they get very relieved when I say that. And then it's it's good you say that, Lars, but we hear that all the time. We had a meeting with the ambassador from country so and so, and they all talk about climate change, and so on. So they're being captured by a mindset or ideology that is others' problems, but they have to solve them. And I find that unfair. Then there is a second layer in this, and that is suddenly it burst out of me when I was in Ghana and we had a big stakeholders meeting, and they were talking about capacity building and the importance of capacity building. And next month we'll have a workshop with so and so and so on. And then I said to them, I look forward to the day when we will not be talking about that we have to do capacity building, but that we will move to capacity using. Because you've had a nuclear university for 40 years. You've been training hundreds of people in nuclear technologies. But where are these people going? Where is the project for them? And wouldn't they be fantastic people in a national project in Ghana, or they could work in a neighboring country, or it can be exporting opportunities. And I think particularly here comes how it's also a solution. There are two solutions in this for what nuclear security is. One is that if, as I said before, the international solutions around nuclear security problems are difficult because some of the big players and problem makers are in the room. Yeah. So it means you have to create the solutions elsewhere. It will have to be like-minded countries together. And often like-minded countries are regionally next to each other. So I think there would be really much beauty in, West African states, East African states, Andean community, and so on, Mercosur maybe, thinking, how can we make like the Euratom Treaty was very fundamental for developing what was the European community and later what is now the European Union. Why couldn't other parts of the world have a Euratom Treaty for West Africa or for the Andean countries and so on? I think that is somehow the next step in this, because the thing that is happening now And unfortunately I have to say that I thought of it as a thought example, but I've been told by so many that it's exactly what is happening. I used it as a thought example when I spoke with people in West Africa. Said, okay, one day you have big country so and so coming to Togo and wants to sell, and the next day you have big country so and so that comes to Senegal and Gambia. And here you have companies coming and their economies are bigger than the economy of that country.
Yeah.
What does that country have to, how can it say no? And then my thought example was, and this was actually with many leadership of the Organization for West Africa. I said, what if it would be the other way around? If your regional organization would say, our region wants 20 SMRs, because if we have them and we spread them evenly, it will lead to solving what is our biggest problem, namely instability of the grid.
Yeah.
You know, the power cuts are so prevalent in developing countries. So if there could be a stability of so if they would go and say we want 20 of these and we'll spread them evenly in our 12 countries to stabilize the grid and have 5 or 10% more electricity produced. So how would that change the situation from being the region going out on the market and make the quest and the demand, instead of it being the other way around, that they are the receiving end for all kinds of proposals?
But what you would say is that the region, gets together, proposes, and goes and says, okay, we want these 20 SMRs, and in a short term, you're going to get them from outside to stabilize the grid in a short term. But after you get that stabilization, then you decide to engage internally in your own projects.
Yeah, well, I mean, either way, I actually think it would be very, very important if countries try to see what can we do ourselves. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, most of the things that are in metallurgy and in construction works and so on, it's all known issues. It's not that there is a whole new Einstein to develop that. It's already been developed, and if it was possible in the 1950s,
now,
then everyone can do it today. But here comes one thing that I learned only like last week when I was in Southeast Asia. There was a meeting for the regulators from the ASEAN countries, and they said one thing that I've never heard before, but I think it's true the more you think about it. And they say, but Lars, all of us would probably have had nuclear power today if it was not because it has been for many years that we are all of us afraid of choosing whom we want to build and cooperate with. Because if we choose that one, then we get trouble with the 2 others or 3 others, etc., etc.
It's a really interesting point.
It's actually an important point. So the whole
politics around it,
our mechanism has unforeseen consequences at other levels, and the way out of that, if you still want nuclear power or other uses of nuclear technology, and that's also very important. I mean, cancer treatment, industrial uses, and all that. But the way out of that is to say, okay, but then we don't want to be reliant upon you. Or you'd say, no, we do it ourselves. And then for the various pieces of technology where we have to go abroad, we will work with countries where we know that they don't have the power or intention to come and dominate us, like South Korea, Brazil, Argentina, Canada, and so on. So some of the second-tier technology nations in this.
Lars, I'm conscious of the time. This has been an incredible opportunity to talk to you. I think that, really surprised, and I love what you say, especially on three parts. This obviously the part of professionalization of winds. We've seen it all along, and it has wonderful impact in the world. But also these two things that you touched today that really resonated with me, and I'm sure with many of our audience, is the first, this winds being this or remaining this independent voice, right? The voice of the truth. And I'm sure you have today, and you will have in the future many, many challenges to remain that independent voice. But I think it's absolutely wonderful that you're doing it, and I think it's necessary 100%. And this third one, that is inspiration, is inspiring countries around the world to take this into their own hands, to understand that they can, and that if they actually get into these projects, even though you're going to take a little bit longer, even though it's going to be hard, but that's going to push your country forward 100 times.
Yes.
So I think that is a wonderful, wonderful project, and I just congratulate you for leading that. These three things I think are wonderful, and I it's an honor to have been talking to you and to see that you're doing this and leading this around the world.
Thank you. If I may just conclude with one thing.
Of course.
And that is to say, sometimes people say to me, yes, but what you're saying now, what does that have to do with nuclear security? And then I say, it has everything to do with nuclear security. Because it's a question of, that you do something that you're proud of. You take care of things that you're proud of. So in that respect, it is very important.
This is a very interesting point.
Yes, and so it is a key issue. And then I will say, and we are actually not promoting nuclear power or energy with this. But what I think is important to promote, it is important to promote that all the countries that are being exploited for their resources, for all these things, that all these countries, that they gain agency and that they can decide what they want to do on their premises, that they go out and choose this kind of cooperation and so on, but they do it because they want it, not because they've been put thumbs into their eyes and now you have to do so and so. So that is crucial.
Yeah.
To give,
I think technology is going to help. It's helping, and it's going to help a lot on that. Technology and what is coming in AI is going to help a lot of countries gain confidence in acquiring this agency.
Yes.
I love that. Lars, thank you. Thank you for this time. I will see you soon in Vienna or somewhere else, so we can have a coffee or a beer and continue chatting on these things, on other topics.
Thanks a lot. It was a genuine pleasure. Thank you.